October 24th, 1929, Thursday morning. The sun rose over Wall Street, but inside the exchange, Armageddon. The roar on the trading floor was so deafening that brokers couldn't hear the man screaming 6 inches from their face. Phone lines? Dead. The ticker machines, the internet of their era, clattered furiously, spitting out thin paper ribbons. But they couldn't keep up. Those ribbons piled up on the floor, knee-deep. A paper graveyard. Brokers, drenched in sweat, howled themselves hoarse, waving sell orders in the air, desperately hunting for buyers. But nobody was buying. First wave, 1.6 million shares dumped. Second wave, 3 million. Third wave, people stopped counting. 6 hours. In just 6 hours, $14 billion vanished into thin air.
Let me put that in perspective. During a single lunch break that day, more wealth evaporated than the entire national budget of Canada. And the nightmare was just beginning. The ticker tape ran 2 hours behind reality. Think about that. You think your stock is worth $100, but on the floor, right now, it's trading at 50. You won't find out until 2 hours later, after you've already lost everything. Investors that day were flying blind into a storm. Now here's the question nobody wants to ask. Was this an accident? A natural market correction? The inevitable end of runaway capitalism? No. This crash had an architect, a name, a face, one man who would leave thousands of shattered lives in his wake. Charles E. Mitchell. They called him Sunshine Charlie because he radiated optimism. He was always smiling. He told America everything was fine, right up until it wasn't. This is the story of one of history's greatest financial crimes. And today, we're going back to the scene.
The 1920s. History books call it the Roaring Twenties. And if you were alive back then, it was a wonderland. The war was over, factories weren't just pumping out smoke, they were printing money. Radios blasted jazz, automobiles promised freedom. You could feel the electricity crackling in the New York air. Everyone was hypnotized by the same dream. You can't get rich by working, but investing? That's the ticket. Barbers, cab drivers, elevator operators, they all had the same phrase on their lips. The market never goes down. But there was a problem. The stock market had always been a playground for the rich. Fat barons and smoke-filled rooms playing with other people's fortunes, until Charles Mitchell kicked the door wide open. Mitchell ran National Citibank, the ancestor of today's Citibank. And this man had a vision. Simple, revolutionary. His slogan sounded innocent. Every American should own a piece of capital. Sounds democratic, doesn't it? Sounds fair. But behind the curtain, Mitchell was building something else entirely. An aggressive sales army that would make modern Wall Street blush.
He imposed brutal quotas on his bankers. The rule was simple: sell or you're fired. Walk into a bank and the person behind the counter wasn't there to help you anymore. They were a hungry predator chasing commission. Bank branches became casinos, and Mitchell knew exactly when to hit the jackpot. Picture this. You're a butcher in Brooklyn. You spend your days elbow deep in meat. One day, you walk into the bank to deposit some cash, and a man in a tailored suit flashes you a smile. "Mr. Johnson, are you going to work for someone else your whole life? Take a look at these General Motors shares, 40% returns last year. Think about your children's future." And just like that, the butcher buys his first stock. Mitchell's sales force spread across America like wildfire. Drivers, factory workers, farmers, maids, people who'd never heard of the stock market were suddenly buying shares. They all saw the same dream: wealth, freedom, retirement, something to leave the kids. But Mitchell never told them the truth. Hidden inside that dream was a nightmare. So how did thousands of people, like Mr. Johnson, people without a nickel to their name, suddenly own thousands of dollars in stocks? The answer lies in the most dangerous invention of the 1920s. Optimism powered the market engine. But the fuel pumped into that engine? Pure poison. It was called margin. Leverage. The system was engineered with diabolical genius. Got $10 in your pocket? No problem. The broker winks at you. Why stop at 10? Put 10 on the table, I'll lend you 90. Now you've got $100 in stocks. Financial steroids. Your buying power multiplied by 10 overnight. When stocks went up, it felt like a dream. A 10% gain meant you doubled your money. Everyone thought they were a financial genius because everyone was gambling with someone else's cash. Amazing, you say. I turned $10 into a fortune. Sure, if the stock goes up.
Let's say it climbs 20%. Your $100 becomes $120. Pay back the broker's 90, and you've got 30 left. You started with 10. Your profit? 200%. Not bad, right? Now let's flip the script. What happens when the stock drops just 10%? Your 100 becomes 90. The broker steps in immediately. That 90? That's my money. Your $10? Gone. Vaporized. Just a 10% dip, and you've lost everything. But it gets worse. What if the stock drops 20%? Now you don't just owe nothing, you're in debt. That's when the phone rings, and the voice on the other end isn't friendly. Money, it says, right now, or I sell your house, your car, everything you own. This was called a margin call. And Charles Mitchell, he was dragging all of America into this debt swamp with a smile.
February 1929, Washington, D.C. Outside, the air was freezing, but inside the Federal Reserve, officials were breaking into a cold sweat. They looked at the numbers in front of them. Their blood ran cold. The data didn't lie. The American economy wasn't growing on production anymore. It was running on borrowed dreams. Margin loans, money borrowed to gamble on stocks, had reached $6 billion, an unimaginable, unprecedented sum. The Fed made an emergency decision behind closed doors. This madness had to stop. A stern, classified letter went out from Washington to the New York banks. The message was clear. Cut off the speculators, turn off the tap, or we all go down. Translation: stop, slow down, the party's over. For a moment, it looked like it might work. In mid-March, markets trembled. Interest rates climbed. The smart money got nervous. Maybe, just maybe, they could engineer a soft landing. Maybe disaster could be avoided. But just as the flames were about to die down, one man poured gasoline on them. Late March 1929, Charles Mitchell stepped in front of the press. He'd read the Fed's warning in his office, and he decided to make the most expensive display of arrogance in financial history. Instead of obeying the government, he declared war on it. He was smiling, confident as ever, and he said, "Whatever the Federal Reserve says, National Citibank stands ready to provide all the financing this market needs." This wasn't just talk. Mitchell announced that he was putting $25 million of the bank's own cash on the table. Stop for a second. Think about what this means. An unelected banker was telling the United States government, "Your authority means nothing here. I'm in charge." Mitchell had defied the Fed, openly, publicly. And what did the public do? Did they panic? No. They applauded. Investors saw Mitchell as a hero, the savior of the stock market. To them, the Fed was the buzzkill trying to end the party. Mitchell was the cool older brother keeping the music playing. After his announcement, the market didn't just recover, it rocketed into the stratosphere. The economists of the day declared, stock prices have reached a permanently high plateau. No more crashes, only endless prosperity. Everyone on the ship was dancing. The orchestra played its happiest songs. Waiters poured champagne. But nobody noticed that Mitchell had cranked the pressure in the boiler room to the breaking point. The engines were on fire, but the music was so loud, no one could hear the ship cracking apart. Mitchell hadn't just poured gasoline on a burning building. He'd pulled the pin on a grenade, set the timer, and the countdown lasted 7 months, until October.
Early October 1929, the first cracks appeared. The smart money, the big investors, the insiders, started slipping out the back door. Quietly. They didn't tell anyone. They just sold and sold and sold. October 21st, Monday, the market dropped. October 22nd, Tuesday, a small recovery. October 23rd, Wednesday, down again. And then came Black Thursday, October 24th, 1929, 10 a.m. The opening bell rang and panic exploded. Everyone wanted out at the same time, but nobody wanted in. Prices cratered. Margin calls triggered. Brokers force-sold their clients' stocks. That caused more drops, more margin calls, more forced sales, more drops. Dominoes falling. Witnesses later said the most terrifying part wasn't the shouting. It was the sound that followed. A low, guttural moan rising from the floor, like a wounded animal. It was the collective sound of 3,000 men realizing, at the exact same second, that their lives were over. Outside the exchange, crowds gathered. People were weeping. Some were praying. Police arrived, not to control a riot, but to prevent suicides. And then the stories began. Edward Hopkins, Detroit, 45 years old, a mechanic, spent his whole life with grease under his fingernails. 20 years of savings, penny by penny, dollar by dollar, he'd put it all in the market, on margin. 3 days after Black Thursday, Edward Hopkins walked into his garage, locked the door, started the engine. He never walked out. Mary, Ohio, a school teacher. 30 years of teaching children to read. Every cent she'd saved for retirement she invested, because the nice man at the bank said it was a sure thing. 1 week after the crash, Mary lost her house, couldn't make the mortgage payments. 30 years of savings, gone in 7 days. We don't know what happened to Mary. The records just say, homeless. Edward and Mary were just 2 of thousands. The crash didn't stay on Wall Street. It spread like a plague. Banks collapsed. Factories shuttered. Unemployment soared to 25%. Farmers couldn't sell their crops. People dug through garbage for food.
You might ask, if I didn't own stocks, why would I care? Here is why. The banks had gambled your savings on the market. When the crash hit, the vaults were empty. People rushed to their local branches, banging on the steel gates, screaming for their life savings, only to find a sign on the door that said, closed forever.
The Great Depression had arrived, and it would last for years.
So what happened to Sunshine Charlie? Charles Mitchell was put on trial in 1933 for tax evasion. The man who destroyed millions of lives was charged with not paying enough taxes. And he was acquitted. Acquitted. He never saw the inside of a prison cell. The only thing he lost was his reputation. He resigned from National Citibank. But don't feel too sorry for him. He landed another job as chairman of a different Wall Street firm, while Edward Hopkins lay in his grave. While Mary wandered the streets, Charles Mitchell was putting on tailored suits and flashing that same old smile. Mark Twain once said, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes." Now look at 2024. Robinhood, Webull, eToro, Binance. Recognize those names? You open an app on your phone, a few taps, and suddenly you're trading with leverage. $10 in your account buys you $100 worth of Bitcoin. $100 gets you 1,000 in meme stocks. Sound familiar? Everyone can be an investor. Financial freedom, passive income. These are Mitchell's slogans, dressed up for the 21st century. During the 2021 GameStop frenzy, thousands of young investors got margin called. Some lost their entire life savings. One young man took his own life because he thought he owed more than he could ever repay. History rhymes. I told you a story today. The story of 1929. The story of Charles Mitchell. The story of Edward Hopkins and Mary. But really, this could be your story too. Because every generation falls into the same trap. They all think, this time it's different.
Technology changes, apps changes, names change. But greed never changes. And someday, somewhere, a new Sunshine Charlie will appear. He'll smile. He'll tell you everyone can get rich. The question is, will you believe him?